Well, hello once again to everyone. Greetings, first of all, to members of our Pilgrim Church family. But as always, I would like to greet any visitors who may be joining in our little video devotional for this week. This is Danny. I'm here on behalf of all of the elders at the Pilgrim Church of Christ. And this is our weekly opportunity for reflection and discernment, or in acrostic form, that would be the Word. This is for Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. You know, it's been my honor to have been part of the Pilgrim Church of Christ education ministry for nearly 40 years now. And although I have been blessed to teach a youth education class for a quarter here and there, my true passion has always been for the adult education curriculum. Over that time, I participated in and I have enjoyed many studies under the teaching and facilitation of some very capable teachers. I've even been further blessed on occasion to have been asked to teach an adult class myself, either solo or with a co-teacher alongside. I've enjoyed both and have learned in every instance. See, I'm a firm believer that the greatest blessing and the most encouragement from any Bible study class is actually derived from the one who takes on the teaching role. I have legal pads with my handwritten notes covering more than 17 years of Bible study at Pilgrim, years in which I have either been a teacher or co-teacher responsible for our adult auditorium class. Over that span, at various times, we have covered the whole Bible, the whole study of the Bible in 16 verses. We have covered the book of Genesis, the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Ruth, the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. We have covered the book of Proverbs. We have covered Old Testament prophecies and of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount. And we have covered the Gospel of John, the parables of Jesus, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and more. Now, of the aforementioned curricula, the one in which our class has no doubt spent the most time has been during our study of the book of Proverbs. It was a continuous study for the class from the year of 2006 through the year of 2012. And even though the curriculum changed at that point, the truth of the matter is that the subject matter was far from being adequately covered. The format that was used had been to move through the 31 chapters not in a sequential manner, but instead by looking at an alphabetical approach to the terms that were being addressed. And after 7 years of study, however, we had only completed an examination of words beginning with the letters A through E. Now, I've been asked to once again teach the Sunday morning adult auditorium class for this quarter, and I felt now was as good a time as any to return to that rich vein of spiritual lessons that can be found in the book of Proverbs, picking up with the terms that begin with the letter F. So if you, either as a member of the Pilgrim Church family or as a visitor viewing this video, are not already currently attending a Bible study class, let this be my invitation to you, to each of you, to participate in our class. Our new quarter begins this coming Sunday, September the 3rd, and we would love to see you be a part of the class over the coming fall quarter. Now, why even study a list of Proverbs that was composed some 3,000 or so years ago? Allow me to answer that question with a few extracts from the introduction comments from my New King James translation of that book. Here are some thoughts that are taken from the following 5 aspects of Proverbs: the book itself, the authors, the time of its composition, a survey of its intended purpose, and the keys to the book. First, let's look at the book of Proverbs itself. The prominent word throughout the book is the word wisdom, which is defined in Bible times as the ability to live life skillfully. The obstacle to doing so, of course, is the ungodly world in which we live. Thankfully, we have these writings to provide us with some instructions, God's instructions, mind you, on how his people can deal successfully with the practical affairs of everyday life. We learn how to deal with God, with parents, with children, with neighbors, and with the government. The text uses a combination of poetry parables, questions, short stories, and wise maxims to give a view of the common sense and the divine perspective necessary to handle life's issues. Ancient titles of this book reflect the early reader's perceptions of its teachings. In Hebrew, it is called Proverbs of Solomon. In Greek, it is also referred to as Proverbs of Solomon. In Latin, it is called Book of Proverbs, and in early Jewish rabbinical writings, it is called the Book of Wisdom. What about the authors of Proverbs? 3 sections of the book, covering chapters 1 through 9, chapters 10 through 24, and chapters 25 through 29, specifically attribute their writings to Solomon, Israel's third king. It should be noted that the third section of that collection are described as Proverbs of Solomon, but, quote, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied, end quote. This serves to insert a time difference of at least 270 years between the time Solomon proclaimed them and the time Hezekiah's men copied them down. The final 2 Proverbs are specifically attributed to Agur, son of Jakeh, and to King Lemuel, respectively. Nothing else about these 2 individuals is available from the scripture record. Scripture's historical details certainly present Solomon as the most logical choice to author the majority of these words. He asked God for wisdom. God granted his request even beyond Solomon's wishes, so much so that people from foreign lands traveled vast distances to hear him speak. And the breadth of knowledge, aptitude, skill, and perception that Solomon thus developed is ranked beyond any other mortal being. Let's look at the time of Proverbs. Solomon's 40-year reign began in 971 BC and ran to 931 BC. Due to the sad report of his straying from God's leadership and guidance toward the end of his life and reign, it is presumed that the majority of his writings were compiled during the middle years of his time of leadership. Of course, as we previously referenced, a compilation of his sayings by King Hezekiah's scribes would have been done during his 29-year reign, somewhere in the neighborhood of 715 BC to 686 BC. What about a survey of Proverbs? These writings touch upon every facet of human relationships, and the principles found here transcend the bounds of time and culture. Much of the book's writings address contrasting concepts recognized as prevalent in everyone's life to some degree. We have wisdom versus folly. We have the righteous versus the wicked. We have pride versus humility. We have laziness versus working diligently. We have poverty versus wealth, love versus lust, and life versus death. Now, for outline purposes, the book lends itself very well to a division into 6 segments. We have its purpose, chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. We have the Proverbs that are directed toward youths, chapter 1, verse 8 through chapter 9, verse 18. We have Proverbs directly from Solomon, chapter 10, 1 through 24, verse 34. We have the Proverbs of Solomon copied by Hezekiah's men, chapter 25, 1 through chapter 29, verse 27. We have the words of Agur, chapter 30, verses 1 through 33. And finally, we have the words of King Lemuel, chapter 31, verses 1 through 31. What about the keys to Proverbs? The book's clearly spelled out purpose makes it easy to extract key concepts. We have key words, wisdom and instruction. These 2 words and the concepts they embody complement each other. Wisdom denotes skill, while instruction embodies discipline. No skill is perfected without discipline, and skill is necessary in order to create anything of beauty. This book serves as a manual to impart the need for, the application of, and the legacy of wisdom from each generation to the next. Key verses found in Solomon? Well, both are found early in the book. I've chosen to read each one of them from the New King James Version translation that I normally use for my study. The first key verse is Proverbs 1, verses 5 through 7, which reads this way: A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. The second key verse is found in Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. And finally, we have the key chapter of Proverbs. Selecting the final chapter, chapter 31 of Proverbs, as the key chapter is interesting in several counts. Quite unlike most of ancient history, it reveals a very high and noble view of women. She is pictured as, quote, a virtuous woman, end quote, with the following character traits being prominently noted. She is referred to as a good woman, a good wife, a good mother, a good employer, and a good neighbor. Parenthetically, for a good contrast, compare the woman depicted here to the one described in chapter 7. Of course, it's also interesting that chapter 31 is not attributed to Solomon, as are the majority of the sayings that we turn to in the book of Proverbs, which makes it interesting as being a key chapter. The final 22 verses of the chapter have a format that consists of acrostic poetry. This was a writing style that was often employed to make the text both more distinctive as well as easier to memorize and to recite. This passage in particular, in the original language, had each verse beginning with the corresponding sequential letter of the Hebrew alphabet. 22 verses, 22 letters in the alphabet. And finally, tradition suggests that a Jewish man would habitually recite this passage to his wife just as the Sabbath drew to a close. Well, I hope that today's video study has perhaps piqued your curiosity and your interest in a study of the book of Proverbs. If that should be the case, please feel free to join us each Sunday morning at 9 a.m. at the Church of Christ in Pilgrim and participate with us as we continue a literary journey through this book for the next 3 months. Well, I hope that each of you can return next week for our next video devotional study. I cannot yet say just what our topic might be, just that it will be scriptural based and it will be heartfelt. Regardless of which path we find ourselves traveling with our next study, I hope you'll be able to join in viewing it once it has been posted online. So until then, I encourage you, make it a regular practice to take time every day, first to spend time in prayer to the Father, and secondly, to take time to study His Word. If you're not currently attending Bible study or worship somewhere, again, I invite you to visit us at the Pilgrim Church of Christ. I will promise you, you'll receive a warm welcome, and you will also have an opportunity to get to know and to grow spiritually with a loving body of baptized believers in God, in His Son, and in His Spirit. Until the next time, I pray that God may bless you and your family each day. Please remember, I love each one of you. God bless. Goodbye.